Hey guys, this is JayKay Talks, episode 4. So, today I wanted to talk about self-awareness.
Okay. Let's talk about self-awareness.
Yeah.
Jason.
Do you want to start?
So, yeah, self-awareness is a funny thing. Some people have a little bit of it, some people have a lot of it. I've always considered myself someone with quite a bit of self-awareness, and I think I can make a statement like that based upon how much I'm constantly asking myself, did I say the right thing? Am I talking too much? Am I doing this enough? Am I doing that enough? You know, that's kind of that inner dialogue that's always checking up on how we're going about our day-to-day life. I think that shows a good amount of self-awareness on my part. I think sometimes a good way to determine if we're lacking self-awareness is if we find ourselves focusing too much on the external. Placing fault and blame on others, or looking to point the finger, looking to...
Like constantly being a victim?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a victim, you can't really be aware of your role in things.
Yeah, you're not taking responsibility for anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think if we're going to talk about self-awareness, it's first important to define it. And I think that, at least in my very, very narrow education of this topic, I would say self-awareness can definitely be defined by just the ability to look at the role you're playing in life. In your own life.
Yeah.
In your own life,
yeah.
Most importantly.
Funny enough, I, for a lot of my life, didn't feel like I was a very self-aware person. So I think we kind of have a different perspective.
As a contrast.
Yeah, because I've lived with you for a few months, and you are a very self-aware person from what I've gathered. You know, and
sometimes to my own fault.
Yeah, just from what I've seen, where you take on responsibility for everything, from what it seems like. Like even when you don't want any help, right? Is that wrong in saying that?
No, you're right. But part of self-awareness is recognizing that the role I'm playing is boxing everybody out so that I don't rely on anybody and that I am, fully self-sufficient. But then the double-edged sword of that self-awareness is identifying with it. So, like, I know this is who I am, right? I'm self-sufficient and independent and I don't need anybody. And it's like, that's not self-aware. That's a masquerade for something, right?
Is it like insecurity almost, sort of? Because it's like...
Trust issues, maybe?
Yeah.
I think that I'm very self-aware of the fact that I'm independent, but I need to be more self-aware of my need for support sometimes, and also for my lack of reaching out and asking for that support and for letting people in. Right? Self-awareness is not limited to our own role, I guess. It expands to where I need to be doing better, outside of that narrow identity I've created for myself.
Yeah, I get that. Where I think what you're saying is like, for self-awareness wise, you are very self-aware like yourself, but you also recognize where you need help within that self-awareness. Right.
And so, as you were saying, how you feel you've lacked self-awareness. Yeah. Now, did that look a lot like, I'm not doing anything wrong? There's nothing here that I could possibly take responsibility for.
It's like as if there was like a hand in front of me for like blinders. Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't like I was like honestly trying to do it. It was just something that kind of just jumped right over me.
Sure.
Where I've done this in the past, where I've asked you like do you think like I need to do more of this, and you think I need to do more of that? And then when you've told me, sometimes my ego has gotten involved. Because
you didn't see it, so how could I see it, right?
Exactly. So I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. Are you kidding me? But absolutely, no, you were 100% right. And I wouldn't take full fault for that in the past, So I think what helped me a lot with self-awareness was constantly asking people around me what I could be doing more of. And then also seeing if it kind of resonates with me, too. Where I'm like...
having the ability to check in on if what the person is saying is their own interpretation of you, or some sort of like,
yeah,
harsh
dig
criticism
or shot, maybe,
right.
of some sort, which
an agenda,
which can happen too. People are people. I'm not. I've done that in the past too, where my intentions weren't always the purest.
Sure.
So and that's like the thing too. So I think for me, there was a lot of times in my life where I wasn't fully present. I wasn't fully recognizing all the responsibilities I needed to actually do, and I was kind of floating. So
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you can, you can. But I think also a lot of people can relate to you too, where it is like that sort of full on taking on all the responsibility.
Sure. The overachievers and the underachievers both are equally as overcompensating.
They can learn something from each other almost to some extent in order to kind of keep that balance, kind of.
Sure. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But that's what I did a lot of the time. Is like I went through a lot of my life not really becoming that aware of a lot of things. So I think what I would do and what I've done lately, because I'm still working on this a lot, is I would recognize in moments, and I'm going to get more into like emotions here, because that I think is also self-awareness too, is recognizing what you're going through. Is that in moments when I felt sad, in moments where I was hurt or felt any sort of feeling or pain in which I didn't know why, instead of actually asking myself why I'm feeling that way, I would go to escapism. So I would smoke weed, I would eat food, and I would do these things, and it
in order to avoid the problem altogether.
And after a while, you don't ever deal with the issue, you just start to see it more externally kind of develop.
I love that you said that. There is something to be said about when we avoid things, if we avoid what's occurring within ourselves, we will start to literally see it manifest outside of ourselves. Like, there really is some truth to that. Like, if we are neglecting the inner voice inside of us, we will see everything in our environment just turn to, like, chaos. And then, again, we go to that oftentimes we will sometimes subject ourselves to that victim mindset of, why is all of this happening to me?
Yeah, poor me, woe is me.
Right? Why is all of this happening?
Yeah.
And when does the point come where we say, what am I doing wrong?
Well,
where do I need to be taking more responsibility?
That's an interesting question, right? Because that is self-awareness. To ask yourself that, to do that, and I think that's what you're even saying by asking that. And I've always wondered that, even with myself. I think when I met you, I think it was even kind of interesting because we had, I think, two different mindsets in which you were very much, everything's on me. If I'm going to get shit done in life, it's going to be on me. Where I had a lot different perspective, where I went kind of like, where the universe will take care of it. I'll be alright, it'll flow. And I think there are positives and negatives to each mindset. But I think you can learn something, like I said, from both. I think if I never had met someone like you, I would have never had gotten to ask myself those questions. In some sense, you inspired me to ask myself more of those questions. To take control and take action and go, okay, I need to ask myself, what can I do in order to make myself become a more, I want to say better, but grow as a human being overall, and not have such a mentality of, well, that's just what happens in life, and go, well, I know if I want a different outcome, I need to make the change within myself. And that's what I tried and started to do was, I started to try and take on more responsibility. To go, this feeling can't be covered up by one of my escapisms. One of my escapisms was food, right? I would eat a lot every single time I felt sad. I would
comfort eating. I think people have referred to it as.
I would smoke weed whenever I didn't feel good about myself, and I would do these things, and I would forget about my problem for a little bit, and then once it came back up again, I would do more of it. So it was like a slow spiral, and then I think when I started surrounding myself with people who were starting to. And you brought up a really good question one time. You go, ask yourself the intention. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I loved that question. Because right before I would eat, right before I would smoke weed, right? I would go, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the reason for what I'm doing? And I would go like,
that's courageous as hell.
Fuck. I would be like, well, I'm not doing this for a good reason. I'm doing this to hide. I'm doing this to run away from myself.
And good thing you had the self-awareness to be able to recognize that. Now, there are some people that don't have that self-awareness. And your perspective is so valuable because there could be other people who struggle with similar habits, you know, escapist tendencies, avoidance tendencies, and they can look at your perspective and think to themselves, wait, if I smoke weed every time I'm sad, that's a bad thing? And some people don't even have that self-awareness.
You want to know something, too, that's even crazier? Is that when I would ask myself the intention, right? And I would recognize the intention wasn't good, I'd still do it sometimes. Yeah, because a habit is such a hard thing to break at like the same time, because it's what you know. It is like a self-defeating thing when you go, well, I'm doing it for this reason, so what do I do now? And when you don't have the tools to go, I don't know what to do, it's so defeating. You just sit there and like, you almost want to cry. You almost want to just be like, fuck, this is my life right now. And
it's like you're trapped.
And that's hard. That's really fucking hard, you know? Because you don't know what to do. You don't. And so what do? You go back to the same habit. But the thing I think that helped me was asking myself that again, and then again, and then again, and then again. And if you constantly do it over and over again, I think you start to look for different sources. I think you start to look for different outlets to go, okay, I recognize I don't know what to do, but I can learn what to do. I can learn to change this. Because I have the power to do it, but I need to figure out how.
Wow.
You know? And it's not easy. And
no, it's not.
It's hard, but it's never going to come in one try. You know, everything with growth takes time. I love the quote, the last thing to grow on a fruit tree is the actual fruit, right? Mm-hmm. The last thing you're going to see is what you want to see. So
I like that in the past, too, you've mentioned how a lot of your problem-solving skills are rooted in trial and error. And I love that. I think that is so crucial because going off of what you're saying about how, yeah, it's difficult, but if you keep asking yourself the same question every time you reach for that habit, eventually your mind will want answers. And even if you have no idea what to do or what you're going to do, you'll try something. And then you could fail, but then you'll try something else. And then that could fail. But if you keep trying and you just don't stop, there's going to come a point where something's going to stick. There's it's a bit of a religious saying, but I feel that it can be taken out of the religious context and used in a more Unitarian spiritual sense. But God helps those who help themselves. Okay, so
I like that.
Scientifically, if objects in motion stay in motion. Mm-hmm. If we keep going, if we keep doing, we're going to get where we need to be. It's that stagnation where we just stop, right? Of just like, I give up. I don't want to try anymore. I'm scared I'm going to fail. I'm scared I don't know. I don't know. And it's like, just do. Fail, fuck up, and then keep doing and keep fucking up. Because eventually you're going to get there. But once you stop, it's game over.
Yeah.
And so I think trial and error is not something to fear. In fact, I think trial and error is one of the most valuable things that we as adaptable and resourceful humans can utilize for our growth. But it starts with self-awareness, recognizing that a change needs to happen, that what we're doing is making us unhappy, or that what we're doing is getting in the way of achieving our goals and objectives. You know, that these are roadblocks. These are not assets to our growth. These are not assets to our goals. And they need to go.
Yeah.
It's self-awareness.
Yeah. I like, as you were talking about that trial and error, that's what it really is. I really like this one quote by this comedian, Artie Lang, and he's had a litany of problems. And I don't know where he's at right now, because that guy always seems to kind of be going up and down. But when he was on one of his rehabilitation times, I hope he still is, is he went, the one thing that got me through it is I would ask myself, can I go without it today? And he would say, yeah, I can do it for today. I can do today. I cannot do it today. Because when you go, I'm never going to do that again, that's a huge expectation.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, to say you're never going to
do
anything.
Your mind gets overloaded by that.
Where it's like, I've done this 1,000 times, and then I'm never going to do it again, just like that. It's like...
Can you think about what you're going to eat next week? Can you plan your breakfast for next Wednesday?
No.
Like who thinks like that, right? So, why do we do that to ourselves?
Yeah.
Why do we set ourselves up for essentially what seems like failure?
Yeah.
You know, by setting these totally unachievable goals. I love that, right? Just for today, kind of, I'm not going to do this for today.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow comes and it's like, okay, I can tackle today.
Yeah, exactly.
I can tackle today. I can tackle today.
It's that building block. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
So.
You know, there have been times in my life where I've definitely been met with roadblocks, and the little mantra or the affirmation that has gotten me through some of the most seemingly impossible times of my life, where I'm looking around and I'm like, there is just no way in hell I'm going to get out of this because I have no idea what to do. The mantra in my head is, just keep going. Just keep going. I'm like defeated, crying, filled with shame, filled with anxiety, filled with just resentments and fear and everything in between, all of that real horrible, deep, dark stuff. And I'm just like, just keep going. It's not going to kill you to just keep going. What's going to kill you is if you sit and you continue to think about how horrible it all is.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Find something to do. Just go, right? And
push.
All valuable stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, with how a lot of the time with being present and kind of what we're talking about, if you don't deal with a lot of like the internal stuff, right, it'll kind of show up externally. So sort of like if you treat yourself internally like shit, that's going to kind of show up externally with even the people around you.
Yeah, so you're saying like if you treat yourself like shit, people are going to start treating you that way because you're going to let them?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think one thing to look at and go, when you start taking care of yourself, right, the first thing you want to do is make sure that inner self dialogue is a loving one, is more of like a one who's going to say, you can do this, get back up, I'm going to pat you on the back, let's keep going, I'm going to praise you, let's get up and do this. Because that's, I think, the thing is that it's going to keep pushing you, you know? But if you have people around you who are treating you like shit, then that self-talk is going to kind of maybe start talking to you differently if you allow it to happen, right?
That's what's important, if you allow it to happen.
Yeah.
Because if we're allowing that dialogue to occur externally, we're also sometimes allowing that dialogue to penetrate internally. I mean, you can certainly just hear what someone is saying and just keep it moving and just not give a second thought. You know, if you're carrying that dialogue home with you, though, then there's a part of you that believes what that dialogue is.
That's what happened to me a lot of the time. When people would talk bad to me or say mean things to me, I would try and brush it off like as if it didn't mean anything to me. But in my head, it was still in there. In my head, because I allowed those words to fester in my head, and then they have power over me. Not the actual person, but the words, because to some extent, that's what I believed about myself.
Right.
So.
And that's the key.
Yes.
You believed it about yourself.
When you start dealing with your internal issues, that's when you start to have a higher self. That's when you start to grow a bit more as a person and go, these words don't affect me anymore because I look at myself differently. I'm on a higher level now than where I was the last time that we met with these words. And that's the difference, you know?
Then you start to realize that most of what people say has nothing to do with you and everything to do with how they feel about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, a lot of times if we treat ourselves well, we're not going to treat other people poorly because we're going to see them as a reflection of us.
And what do the words mean then, especially if you love yourself and you care about yourself and you know in yourself everything that you've done for yourself, right? And a person's telling you suck, you ain't shit, all like this stuff, and you're going to be like, well, that just isn't true. So
Yeah.
So I think
it's a very like logical thing that occurs where it's like, well, you're simply wrong there.
Yeah,
so I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear that.
Honestly, so it's just like, I think this is more of a you problem
right.
now.
It's
so,
more of a you thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So I
It's great when you get to that point.
Yeah.
It's hard to get to that point sometimes.
It's nice to say it aloud too, because it's a lot harder. Because I love when I even watch like these videos and like when you get to this point, right, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that tomorrow, and it's like, no, it's never that quick.
No, definitely not. I remember, God, for the longest time, someone could so much as point out one insecurity, one flaw. See, my issue wasn't so much that I would carry people's words with me, because I had enough self-awareness to know if someone's saying something about me and it's affecting me, it's because I really do believe it, in which case I gotta fix it. My issue was I already was aware of my insecurities, and so I always wanted to hide them from people because I wanted to keep my insecurities out of sight. Because every time someone would point out an insecurity, right? Like if I was very insecure, for the longest time I was very insecure about my voice. You know, when I was a teenager and I'd be on the phone with someone, they'd be like, oh my goodness, you sound like a man. And I would be like, woof, you know, and so then I started to, you know, be very aware of that, like how my voice sounded, and even to this day it can be difficult for me to listen to myself talk on recordings, so this is like a big deal for me, but it gets to a point though where you stop giving people that much power over your insecurities. I already know what I'm insecure about. I don't need to allow other people to add on to that burden of feeling insecure for me, right? So, if I'm insecure about my voice now and someone tells me I sound like a man, well, simply I could be like, well, I am a man, you know? And it's like, now it's like, yeah, take it back. Where it's like, this is something I've dealt with. I'm continuing to deal with it every single day of my life.
Yeah.
And I'll be damned if I'm going to let someone like you add on that burden.
Yeah.
You know, if someone ever told me that they hated me, I'd say, well, don't worry, because no one can hate me as much as I hate myself. So I know at least that you'll never hate me more than I hate myself. And now obviously I'm at a place in my life where I say that as more of a deflection than a reality, because you know, I've worked on that. I've worked on loving myself and appreciating myself, but it's just about taking that power back, you know. And it's the same thing with choosing not to carry people's words with you. If someone is saying hurtful things, you take your power back by leaving those words exactly where they are, in that person's mouth, not in your head. And self-awareness is important. Knowing who you are is important, because if you know who you are, people can't tell you who you are. So as long as you know who you are, and I mean all of you, your insecurities, your kind of shadow, the things that you don't want to acknowledge about yourself, but when you do bring awareness to those shadows, like, you know, people's shadows look different. Some people's shadows are manipulative, vindictive, some people are bullies, you know, inherently, and I think a lot of times we try to block these shadows out and pretend that they don't exist. The problem with that is then those shadows will be reflected in our environment, right? If we become aware of those shadows and have that self-awareness, again, we're not surprised anymore. We're not caught off guard, and we're not giving our power up. Now someone says, well, you're a manipulative, vindictive piece of shit. I could sit there and be like, yeah, you're right, but I'm working on it, and I don't really need you to make me aware of that. I've already got it covered, right? So, ownership.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility.
You want to know what the thing I've learned, too, is that, to admit to yourself things that you don't want to admit to yourself is a very strong process. Yeah. Because you're allowing your ego to be on full display to yourself. You know what I'm saying? So when you say, I am this and I am that, and it took you a while to really admit that about like yourself, that can really be a healing exercise. Because I think a lot of the time in society, we are looked at as being weak for being vulnerable.
Always, right?
Or,
gosh,
actually, I shouldn't say that, because that's a generalization.
No. That's a common occurrence,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, how many times are you watching something on social media or in media in general, music, movies, TV, and it's like as soon as the person has reached a moment of weakness, people are not clapping, for their empowerment. That's when the villain, strikes, or that's what, vulnerability is always shown as weakness in our society here. So
yeah, okay.
Sure.
So I think being vulnerable with yourself and honestly telling yourself truly what you need help in is a very powerful process. I think it can truly help you as a person. Because when a person says it to you now, like you're saying, you already know that about yourself. You already recognize, that is something I have been in the past, but I'm working on it now.
Right.
And even too, if you're finding yourself around people who are like that, too, that makes you kind of start to question, who are these people I'm surrounding myself with? Which is also kind of a dope process too. Because then you start to look at yourself, and then you start to look at them, and then you go, do we align? Do what they value and what I value align? And it's okay if they don't, because maybe there's a higher, maybe you guys are on just different levels, right? And maybe you need to find your own different tribe now, your own group of people in which you align with more.
Right.
You're never gonna avoid people who don't mesh with you well. That's part of life. It's just how you react to them.
Right.
But you can control who you let in your life more than others. So I think a lot of the time, if we feel as though we're being really bogged down and we can't really grow at where we are, look at your surroundings. Look at who you're surrounding yourself with, and there's a great quote that goes, "You can't grow in the same place you got sick." I believe is
you can't get better, you can't get well in the same place you got sick, right?
Exactly.
Same.
And
idea.
that's true because it's right there in like the pudding, right? It's very honest.
Proof is in the pudding.
Proof is in the pudding. Thank you. So, but yeah, I think once you start looking internally, you'll start looking externally, and you'll start seeing a reflection of yourself within the environment around you. Because usually, when you start treating yourself better, that's usually when it starts to reflect in your external environment, the people that you are surrounding yourself with.
So true.
Because likeness attracts, right? So if you're attracted to certain things that are very that are more aligning with you and are better for you, then usually people and things will also come along with that. I think a lot of the times too, what I tend to ignore, and I shouldn't say a lot of the times, what people tend, because this is more of a personal thing, is that I will go through life with blinders a lot of times to my feelings. So what I realized is that like I have like this thing where I have a mindset in which I'll just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and not ask myself how I'm feeling. And a lot of unregistered feelings happen because of that, because I'm just in survival mode. So when you're in survival mode a lot, I don't think you're ever really getting to know the person who you are, and you're kind of putting yourself on autopilot. So we even talked about this too, where I even wrote in my notes, how are you feeling right now, in order to kind of bring yourself back to that present moment. And that has helped me a lot with unpacking a lot of my emotions, because I recognized I'm actually I'm very disconnected from my emotions a lot. Where something traumatic might happen and I won't really react. I'll be very almost like stonewalled to it, and people around me be like, do you have more questions? Do you want to know more? And I'm just like, no, I'm good. And they're like, what? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine, good. And I think it's also because I don't feel comfortable around the people who are usually asking me that. Because I recognize if I do have emotions strong enough to actually register, I only register them by myself.
Okay, so you're a little bit more of a private feeler.
Yes, but a lot of the times even too, I won't even know. I can't describe into words the emotions I'm going through. This is what happened with me. Where I'll be feeling very sad, but during that day, I won't say it to myself. I'll just go through the day.
So even when you're private, you're not feeling.
Yeah.
So you don't feel comfortable around the people you're with.
Yeah.
And you're not comfortable around yourself to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're just disconnected.
Exactly. The biggest time whenever I know is physical identifications, I guess, would be where I'm crying. And crying isn't always a sad thing, but it's usually, you can kind of logically go, well, something really traumatic just happened, or something really bad just happened, and I'm crying. So obviously that means I'm upset. You know what I mean? So this like logical kind of thought process loops in.
Like
you're
robotic.
Like, holy shit, like, connections.
What
like,
is this, tears?
like honestly.
What is this water pouring from my face?
And so that's when I really started to ask myself, how am I feeling? And that's when I went, okay, I'm pretty disconnected from my feelings here. So how do I work on that? And I think,
God, is that a brave thing to do, Jason?
Yeah, it's not fun. I mean, it's good.
It's never really fun.
No, it's never fun. It's not
Let's
easy.
Let's work on that good old childhood trauma.
It's not easy. So I think what I learned is that in moments in which I am not feeling much and I'm just trying to go through life, I have a lot of things in my notes that tend to help me. I look at my values for the first...
When you say notes, this is just
This
for
is
our
my
viewers.
notes on my iPhone.
Oh, like you're just like journaling?
It's like my iPhone notes. So it's, I usually write down sentiments to me that I feel are very important I can ask myself in the future.
Oh.
So like there's literally like a page on my notes that goes...
Not aware of this.
How are you feeling? And then there's like another one that goes values, what you value most in life. You know what I'm saying? So there are certain things in which I have written down to look at in the future and go... Okay, am I asking myself these things? Are the things I'm doing aligning with these things?
Oh, and, I like that, Jay.
And I think I love using the notes on my iPhone because then, well, first off, when do I not have my phone? I mean, not right now, obviously, because it's right over there. But it's just like the point where it helps me a lot really ground myself and really become present and go, okay, I'm feeling sad right now. And I really need to work through this and understand where is this sadness coming from. And then you can feel that, right? You can feel the emotion of sadness, and then you can also kind of give reason to it and go, well, that makes sense why I'm sad. Or maybe I'm just not...
Like validating your experience.
Yes, exactly, you know? And so I think that was a big step for me as of late to really become more self-aware. You know, to
just validating everything that you go through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you know, like. And
so cool.
And the one thing you really have to do too, for me, well, like I said, I gotta take these generalizations. For me, is to make sure that you feel as though you're in a safe place within yourself and externally. You know,
just create that environment.
Yeah,
that just feels really safe, really supportive,
and then slowly build yourself up. You know what I mean? Slowly build yourself stronger in like the sense of feeling as though you can be vulnerable and it'll be okay no matter what happens.
Right, because you've made friends with those feelings.
Yes.
So now you know whether you're expressing those feelings alone or with anyone else.
Yeah.
You're in control, so to speak, right? Like you know yourself.
How others might react to it. And when you become strong enough, won't matter,
right? Because
you know in yourself that what you're feeling is valid,
right?
And that's a powerful thing too. When and that's self-confidence. That's your self-esteem going, I'm strong enough myself to know what I'm feeling is valid, and then I'm able to cry here in front of these people and feel okay within myself.
Yeah,
you know.
Sure.
So it's a powerful thing to, I think, work on yourself and become more self-aware. You become more of an for me, at least, it helped me become a little bit more actualized in myself. And look around myself and look internally and go, okay, this is what I want and this is what I don't want and this is how I'm feeling. You know, it's a good way to navigate, I feel like, through life for me in order to grow as a person. So I feel like with a lot of my self-awareness, it's unpacking a lot of these habits in which I had to unlearn, to go, actually, you don't need to go through life like that. You can actually go this way and you could figure out a different route to do this. You know, it's not always black and white. You know what I mean? There are other ways in which you can learn things and feel things out and understand yourself too. So I with self-awareness, especially as of this year, especially in the quarantine when we had it, because that 3 months right there, that was a lot of introspection for me. That was a lot of just sitting there with myself and asking myself, what are my thoughts? Why am I having the thoughts that I'm having? And what is there? So here are my thoughts, right? Here are all of them, and why am I having them on a day-to-day basis? And what is the deeper meaning behind these thoughts? it's that introspection to go, well, these thoughts came from somewhere, and where did they come from? You know what I mean? How did I get here? Because I was there. You know, so that's been important to me during this quarantine.
Would you say that that what you've been going through, sounds like over the past couple of months, is very much a getting to know yourself in all of your entirety? The many complex facets of yourself, your kind of unconscious process, your conscious process.
You want to know what it's really been? It's been absolutely getting to know myself, but it's also been getting to not know myself at all. Because it's
moving away from who you thought you were.
Exactly, because cool. It leaves you with so many things to go, wow, I didn't know shit about myself. And that's okay, because I've been here before. It's just different, you know? And I think for me, a lot of the time, I was so scared of that. I was so scared of feeling as though if I learn more, if I grow, it's going to be scary because I feel like I won't know what to do. You know, I feel like I'll be lost because I'm identifying with the things around me at this time. But in actuality, I feel like once you actually get to know yourself more, you start to recognize that the things you identify with are
placeholders, maybe.
Yeah, more
placeholders for the beginning stages of your identity.
Yeah, you know, and that these identities, these things that you put a lot of value on are in some sense just things. You know, they are placeholders for maybe something greater.
Wow.
So I think that was a big step for me to understand that change is not a bad thing. And I felt like a lot of my life I always thought change was scary, but change is evolving. We, in a society today, I mean, you look from 2000 to 2020, how many things have changed and evolved, right? If you're still living in 2000, most people, me, if I'm looking at that and I'm going, this person still has like a mindset of a person in 2000, I would say, this person hasn't evolved in 20 years. This person has not changed their mindset, and look at everything that has come out during that time.
Right.
Go to a person in 2000 and say that there's going to be an iPad with touchscreen and all like this shit, and they wouldn't know what to probably fucking do. You know what I mean? And that's the thing too. So I think to evolve and to change with the times is not a bad thing. It's actually what humans do. In that sense, you know what I mean? Where we've
always evolved.
Yeah, exactly. So
we've always evolved.
I think for me, evolving and being able to change and accept that change has been a powerful step for me. Especially during this time and in this introspection, it's helped me figure out new ways to help myself internally and externally, even with interactions I have on a daily basis. Especially as a barber too, I see many people a week, you know, just too many I can't count, you know, and to see all those interactions and to look at them differently and understand each person differently, when you start to look more internally, you start to get a better sense of like yourself too, and to go, how do I want these interactions to go, and how are they going? So
what's really cool about what you're doing too, Jay, is you're putting yourself in the driver's seat, because change is inevitable. There is no possible way you can stay in one place from the time you're born and have that experience stay exactly the same until the time you die. And even then, death is change. You're changing your state of existence, right? Change is inevitable. So if we kind of put ourselves in the driver's seat of, I'm going to be the one making changes, you're no longer surprised half the time because you're the one who's making those adjustments and changes. So now if anything in your environment changes, you've probably already prepared for it. Additionally, change a lot of times is exciting, right? Why do humans do half the shit they do? Why do humans pick up a book or watch a movie or go to an amusement park? They like a change of perspective, a change of scenery, a change of, like just a change, period, right? Like, why do we go to an amusement park and pay money to get on a roller coaster to experience something thrilling? You know what's thrilling? Revamping and upheaving everything that is no longer working in your life. you are putting yourself in the driver's seat of your life. And that is incredible.
Yeah. I like how you even said a movie, too. Because I was actually thinking about it as you were saying that we watch a lot of movies. And if it's a very typical movie, right? Hero, villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually the first go at it, the hero might lose, right? Does the hero go at it the same exact way he went at it the first time?
Certainly not.
Because he would lose.
Sure.
So he has to change in order to actually defeat the villain.
Reach his goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So it's kind of funny how we're surrounded by this idea of change constantly within movies.
And for some reason, we love to avoid it.
Yes. Well,
and we like to act terrified when it happens because we're not prepared.
I understand it, though. I do, because
Me too.
Yeah, where we grew up with... I grew up with a certain amount of knowledge, and I was scared to understand more because I felt like I already knew the things around me well, and they were comfortable. I could hug them. I could be like, okay, I know what this is. It's okay. Yeah, it was, you were being pacified to some extent, like how you said, instead of taking the pacifier out and saying, go after it, go figure it out.
Right. But what's scary is knowing that everything that you're hugging is only temporary.
Yes.
Right? Because again, change is inevitable. Everything has to run its course eventually.
Yes.
Everything decays. Everything goes through a process of regeneration, death, rebirth. So if we are constantly gripping onto the mindset of comfort and I guess I want to say security, but it's a false sense of security, kind of this stalemate.
Security is a superstition.
It is. And so if we're gripping onto the stalemate and keeping everything exactly as it is, we are going to go through life so scared because intuitively we know that eventually it's going to run its course and we have nothing else to grip onto, which is why knowing who we are and being very grounded in that identity of who we are is one of the most tangible things we can rely on.
You want to know what's funny too is I remember reading a book and they actually had like a really good line. They said a predictable life is a very hard life to keep. And I was like,
I love that.
Shit, that's actually really honest. Because in order to keep everything predictable within life itself, that's so fucking hard. You have to know the people around you to a T. You have to know everything that's going to happen to a T. And that's not real. You know what I mean?
No. That would be a false reality.
Unless you're living in a squishy room in which you're like, I'm just going to sit here all day and do nothing. But then again, you have your thoughts. You never know what they're going to ponder on.
And you can't control them.
Well, to some, you know what I'm saying? To some extent.
I mean, your thoughts, you can control your awareness of your thoughts.
Yes.
But you can't control your thoughts.
Yes.
So, I suppose if you stayed in a cushy, padded room and controlled the awareness of your thoughts to such an extent that you no longer fixated on them, well, I suppose that would make you the Buddha. I believe you would reach enlightenment if you managed to do that. So, if anyone's able to do that, let me know. Because good old Buddha decided to literally reach the highest state of consciousness by loving comfort to such an extent that he stayed there and just observed and witnessed everything around him. Although even in the story of Siddhartha, which I believe, wow, and I really hope I'm not being misinformed here, or spreading misinformation. I believe it was a story about the Buddha, and Siddhartha was kind of a representation of that. I didn't read the whole book. I read it in school. Right. But what I do remember was that he lived in a mansion, and he lived a very comfortable, secure life. He had all the material comforts he could ever want, and that he was confined to this mansion. He could not leave his house.
I remember this.
And then he took that bold leap because he met the beggar who had nothing.
Yes.
And he just totally awakened, like, oh my god, people live like this? I thought everyone lived the way I did. And so suddenly he embarks and he goes on a bit of a spiritual journey and finds himself underneath this tree and decides to wait. And that's when he controlled his awareness and reached enlightenment. So even if we wanted to try to play devil's advocate and say, well, maybe comfort will help me reach enlightenment, he still made a change.
Big one.
He still made a huge change. He He decided to forego everything he knew.
I thought that story, and maybe I thought it went a little different. Cause,
Let me know, because...
Yes, because I remember reading the book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You remember reading that? Did you read that?
I read bits of it. I didn't read the whole thing.
At the beginning part, he talks
really
about, I
bad
think,
with
about
books.
that story, I think, where he, or it might have been somewhere else. Like I said,
should we be talking about this?
No, probably not. Definitely not. This is all. Don't take our words on any of this shit. Besides just this part. All right?
Better off turning the video.
Yeah. But I thought it was he became a beggar, and then he learned after a while that being a beggar sucked. And,
yes, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Right.
And that's I kind of paraphrase that by saying he went on a spiritual journey, didn't I?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah. I just didn't know, okay. Because, like, he did live rich.
That's a spiritual journey.
And then he was a beggar, and then he's like, man, both of these, like being rich sucks, and kind of being a beggar sucks, too, so it's like...
But yeah, he had to go through a spiritual journey. He had to go through change and reform and regeneration. He reinvented his identity several times before he finally decided to sit.
Yeah,
right?
And that's evolved. You know what I mean? But like, I didn't get that from like the original. That's
and even then, his consciousness was evolving. His state of awareness and his state of consciousness didn't stay the same.
Did he reach? Okay, so maybe didn't he reach Nirvana? And I was like, nah, I'm gonna come back.
I don't remember. I didn't
I thought like he reached it and he was like, but I want to go help others, so I'm actually gonna kind of.
Well, that's the whole concept of like a bodhisattva, is someone who kind of reaches nirvana, reaches enlightenment, and then comes back. That's in spirituality. That's the natural flow of things.
You imagine that change though, right? You
Jesus
reach
Christ did that
nirvana,
too, and then you're like,
fuck this, I'm gonna go back and help people reach nirvana too. And it's like, damn, these people don't like comfort. Like,
no,
like they would have just sat there and just chilled with it, you know? So
a comfortable life is a tragic death.
So if them motherfuckers can reach nirvana of all comfortability and still come back, then you can do it too. That is what you should know.
JayKay Talks, you heard it here.
JayKay Talks, that is the best way to go about this, alright?
Heard it here.
If the Buddha, if Jesus, all these motherfuckers can go to nirvana and come the fuck back to help others, you can get out of your comfort zone, alright? That's it. Thanks
for tuning into JayKay Talks episode 4. As you can see, we've got Jason, who's a rising star on his way to Nirvana, and also potentially to, would you say life coach or motivational speaker? Something along those lines.
I'm something.
Stay tuned.
I'm something.
Lots of exciting things to come.